What is good? High noon. Welcome back to the Love, Life, and Legacy podcast. Today's episode is from lots and lots of conversations with single people that are preparing well for marriage, and they're trying to understand what is a healthy relationship between a brother and a sister, between a man and a woman of peer age before they're married. What, in other words, is the high noon standard? What is the high noon way of a brother-sister relationship in a healthy way? It is something that we have not cracked the code on. In fact, not just in high noon, but also historically, we've never tried to answer the question of what is the God's ideal of what a healthy brother and sister relationship is. So we're trying to get clear on this today with Araceli and David to figure out what is the high noon way of having a healthy brother and sister relationship. I know this is a big topic for a lot of people. We hope that it's helpful. And if you are single or if you're a parent, please share it with your team, with your family, especially if you're preparing for marriage and the blessing. This is a topic that really should spread and we should talk more about in our world. All right, enjoy. All right. Howdy, everyone. Welcome back to the Love, Life, and Legacy podcast. It is your good friends. Who are you guys today sitting in with us for this episode?
Hello, everyone. Back with me, Araceli here, and our new guest.
Hello.
Thanks, Araceli. And who's this fine young man?
David Hewish in the house. Happy
It's
to
our
be here.
dear brother, David.
We have with
Hello,
us,
David.
good to have you, David, our special snowflake of a human being. It's so nice to have you. You're a special snowflake, and I'm going to keep reminding you that. Yeah?
It feels so
Just
uncomfortable
for everyone to
when you
know
say
that that's a good term.
Yes, special snowflake. Everyone is a special snowflake, if you think of them.
It's true. It's true. You guys
Well,
are
it
also
comes
very
from
special.
an entitled connotation, which is like, I'm a unicorn, and yes, every snowflake is special in God's eyes, right? But we're here to talk about something really dicey and juicy, which is relevant to so many of the people that we have been working with and mentoring in our core program. Our core program is a program dedicated to single people preparing well for marriage and blessed life. And we have some of the most fantastic matching candidates and marriage candidates on the planet there. And they have been having this question come up all the time, almost every week, is what is a healthy relationship between a brother and a sister? What is a high noon relationship between a brother and sister? And so today we are going to launch this topic into new territories with Araceli and David here to help shed some perspective, experience, but also two individuals that have had a lot of victory and confidence in the way that they have approached developing a healthier relationship with brothers and sisters. So to kick us off, first of all, David, why don't you share some context for why this is an important conversation to have here at Hungry?
Okay, good. Yes. So why is it important? Good question. I would say that growing up, everyone in our movement is trying to figure out, this whole blessing thing. Why is it important? And we're always advised not to get too close to people of the opposite gender, right? Just quite naturally, because we're trying to avoid any mistakes or affairs to happen, trying to preserve our purity. But it can become unhealthy when we start ignoring the opposite gender and losing the ability to actually raise with them and have good friendships, which, I don't know, I'm not sure about you guys. I feel that's a very important thing, to genuinely have good brother-sister connections in a healthy way.
Yeah, got it. Thank you, David. So Araceli, what is your take on why this is important conversation to people?
I think this is important for many reasons, but one of them being, if you manage to have a successful relationship with a brother or a sister, someone from the opposite gender, it means that you are able to appreciate people from their original God-given value. And when you achieve that, when you are able to get that, it's it's an amazing type of relationship that you can have with your brother, where you are able to understand God's other side of the world in a way. And having that, it's kind of like this realm of love, of heart, that we usually talk about this, and being able to be a good sister, right? Being able to love our brothers and our sisters. It's I think it's a very important foundation for a future relationship with your husband or your wife, your spouse. So yeah, being able to do that in a pure way, right? Not losing your purity in the way of having a relationship with someone from the opposite gender. I think it's really important so that you are able to have that understanding of someone else from the opposite gender. And yeah, there's a lot of benefit of being able to relate with someone like a brother or a sister, being able to understand that other world that we're very different. So I think it's very important for those reasons, to be honest.
Yeah. So what has been your experience with the other world of men before you were married, and how is that helpful?
Well, I have two elder brothers in my family. We're four, two brothers, two sisters. So from the beginning, I always had a good relationship with the opposite gender. I had always a good relationship with my father, and with my siblings, we were basically treated as little young brothers. So I think it was very useful for me, or beneficial for me to have that as a foundation to first off understand the difference between men and women, because it allowed me to discover myself in a very interesting different way. Yeah, that's a whole episode in itself, but just having that as a foundation just allowed me to be very appreciate men from I guess from much more of a pure perspective, because I love my brothers, right? And I always thought of other friends that from the opposite genders as brothers, because I had that relationship of being taken care of, being my brothers were responsible for me, and they would try to take care of me. And so yeah, having that relationship with my elder brothers then I guess allowed me to, how can I put this, relate with other men, with other friends from my school, my church, and not be scared of them in a way. Because I feel like a lot of sisters do struggle with the unknown world of men, and so they're kind of scared of that.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was the opposite. I was very curious about why are men the way they are. I was curious about understanding them and being able to have a relationship with them, like a actual friendship, brother sister relationship, to be able to understand their perspective but also have my perspective be heard from them. And I also had the experience of having a relationship with someone from the opposite gender be the best. Yeah, because I wasn't very clear myself on I wasn't very clear at some points in my own identity, in my own vision for my blessing and my ideal. And so that kind of like gave room for some mistakes to be made. Nothing too drastic, nothing too severe, but yeah, I had that experience as well. And so also that allowed me to know myself a lot more in understanding what is it that I needed from men, from general my brothers, but also my future spouse, what I would need from him. And so having that as a foundation when I started my matching process with David, my husband David, yeah, I was able to be understanding of him, his kind of like world, his own journey in his growth, because I was a part of somebody else's growth before, my brothers and my friends, and I was able to be, I guess, have some compassion and understanding from that, and as well be able to put my perspective and my kind of like advocate for my own needs in my relationship with him. And so we were able to become very good friends with my husband even before being matched. So yeah, that was kind of like my experience.
Yeah, thanks, Araceli. Just for clarity, that's David Hirano, not David Hewish.
Yes.
Different than the David we have here right now in front of us. Yes. So you said basically your experience with men was rather healthy, right?
Yeah.
You said you had a good relationship with father and with your brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still feel in some ways when you did get married that there was some areas of mystery that were still hard, or was it all smooth with your husband? Like you're like, I get men,
I wouldn't say I get men like I'm an expert or anything like that, but I guess there's this experience where, because we're so different and we can't really relate to each other's experience, we won't believe it. So I guess having that healthy relationship with my dad, or even with my brothers, it wasn't always healthy, but it was a relationship. Having that relationship just allowed me to be able to be open to understanding and be open to, even if I'm not understanding, and believing that that's that reality for him, right? And just being able to be have grace about that situation, right? Both for him and for myself. So yeah, there were some mysteries for sure, and there was definitely a lot of healing to be done in my relationship with David as well, because even though I had a good relationship with my siblings and my brothers and my dad, there's still, we're not perfect, we're still growing. And I feel like I had some negative experiences with men in general that I was bringing on to my relationship with David, my husband. And so being able to have this higher level of intimacy with my husband, where we could share everything from our different perspectives, allowed me to heal certain negative perspectives that I had of men, and just become curious again, and understand that certain differences that we have doesn't make us, bad or good or better or worse, just make us different. And that's God's plan, right? So that's something that I learned to appreciate as something that we have as good. It's part of our nature.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. So for you, David, what has been your journey in understanding what a healthy relationship is and how to create that healthy brother-sister relationship? Because you're still a young dude, just by the way, everyone. David is a 18-year-old, soon to be 19, eternally 18-year-old, 6 foot something tall British man with who grew up in this movement. Actually, you're a third generation, so your parents grew up in the movement, right? A second gen. But what's been your experience in kind of figuring out navigating a healthy brother-sister relationship as a single dude?
It's fair to point out that I have 4 sisters. I also have 3 brothers, so we're quite a big family. But it just means that from the start, I was surrounded by girls, and I had to try and, learn how to relate with them. Honestly, at a young age, I wasn't very, like respectful or like courteous. I would just play with them as if I was playing with other boys, which, it worked sometimes, other times not. But we just kind of grew up that way as just kids, just rough and tumble. And then as I grew older, I became more like, these are my precious sisters. I want to look after them. I want to take care of them, that kind of thing. And I would say that my relationship with my sisters now is I would say it's really improved over the years. But that's it within the family. Outside the family is a whole different story, because I was being raised with all this emphasis on living a life of purity, preparing one day for an eventual blessing, and really kind of trying to make the right decisions in my youth, my childhood. But yeah, I guess it was quite a challenge though to try and figure out how to be a good brother to my sisters in my community and outside of my community as well. How just to relate with the opposite gender. And I think in our community we can often have a difficult time trying to figure out how to really make those relationships work, how to really have a clear, strong brother-sister relationship. Because we live in a world of 2 extremes, I feel, in our movement, where it's either you're not allowed to look at the opposite gender, otherwise you have sinned and you will be thrown in hell, or it's the opposite, which is it's more casual. And often what happens then is brothers and sisters get too close and you have dangerous relationships there. Dangerous, by the way, meaning that they often can lead to falling before the blessing. I think it's cultural. Like you'll find in more Eastern nations like Korea, you have more the strict version, and then in places like Europe and America, you see the more casual. But it also really depends on what family you're brought up in and those kind of things. My journey of trying to figure out how to be a brother and especially to love my sister in a very mature way has been up and down. I think there are times where it really worked and times where it didn't. One more recent experience for me was when I was on the 21-day pilgrimage in Korea, where we had 100 brothers and sisters from all over Europe. And I'm quite a social person. I like to interact with people. I like to from day one kind of reach out and be like, hey, I'm David, let's talk, what's your favorite film, what's your favorite food, kind of casual but fun. But on this pilgrimage, I wanted to really focus on my internal state and just kind of be prayerful and meditate and not reach out to people so much. We obviously had our teams that we would communicate with every day, but apart from that, I was basically spending all my free time alone, reflecting and meditating. I got actually a lot of attention from brothers and sisters during the workshop who they just wanted to, you know, become friends. They wanted to figure out who I was as a person. And I was in this kind of prayerful state. So I was like, okay, if God, if you want me to make some friends here, then I'll try and make some nice heavenly friendships here. But I think because of the fact that I was spending a lot of alone time, for some reason it drew a lot of attention from sisters who were like, ooh, this guy is meditating. This guy's interesting. He's not like the usual guys. And I got a lot of attention, and it wasn't always the healthiest because there were some times where I would have really wonderful conversations with these sisters, and other times where we would spend too much time one on one, which is really not healthy. And because then the lines would get blurred, and I would be confused, like, oh, is this sister talking to me because she wants to be my friend, or because she's starting to have a crush on me and is pursuing me in some way? And then also looking at myself and going, am I talking to this person out of a genuine heart, or am I starting to have feelings for this person? And it was rather confusing because all of us are young adults. At the time, I would have just turned 18. And so we're all trying to be more mature and we can navigate the world now that we're adults. But that was a bit of an arrogant perspective because we weren't really being clear at times, or at least I wasn't being clear at times with my interactions. And I had to learn quite quickly after a few interesting experiences of having a confusing relationship with some sisters. I had to learn that actually one-on-one relationships with the opposite gender doesn't really work. And it's playing with fire because God designed us as men and women to have a natural attraction to the opposite gender. And I think it's been biologically proven that if you just look into their eyes, the eyes of someone from the opposite gender, for like 8 minutes, you will automatically start having feelings for them just by the eye contact alone. It's quite interesting. And so I really feel like, we could just turn around and say, well, it doesn't work to have friendships between brothers and sisters. But I strongly feel that actually God wanted us to relate with everyone. So I've had to really learn that actually it's in group scenarios where you can truly express yourself as a brother and sister and enjoy healthy relationships with the opposite gender. Because then you have other people around you who can keep you accountable to the purpose of your friendship, and also just to make sure that nothing gets out of hand. Like on a workshop, you have a team and you're working together to fulfill certain activities and you're learning together. That's normally a scenario where you can really grow close to the sisters and brothers in that group, in that situation. But also, like, if you have a team at work, your colleagues, or if you're on some kind of mission program, maybe you're fundraising, you have a higher purpose than just each other becoming friends because you're doing something much more intentional, right? So I think having intentional relationships has been really helpful for me. Most of my friends who are sisters are either blessed sisters I can learn from, or people who I'm working with in my team scenario. Araceli, I count you as one of them as well.
I would like to be one of those blessed sisters if I can someday.
Sorry, mate.
I'm actually growing my hair out, David, just so I can fit in.
Oh,
I'll keep the beard, though. Thank you, David. Thanks for sharing that. I think I heard two really important rules of thumb and pieces of advice. The first one I heard was to keep your relationship with the opposite gender in a group environment where you can really experience a true high noon relationship, because that's the idea of high noon, is that we don't have shadows, we don't have misguided intentions, but we're actually here fully ourselves. And that's how God intended us to live together as brother and sister. And then the second piece of advice, which I think is fantastic, is have other, if you're a man, have sisters who are blessed be your friends. The people that you connect and relate with and learn how to experience the world of women should be done through people who are blessed, our own physical siblings, or our mother or father, right? If you're a woman, it would be through blessed brothers. through physical brothers, through father figures like Araceli experienced, and in group settings. And I think if we can do that, it pretty much covers the basis for the need that we have to experience the opposite gender in a healthy Hainun way, right?
Yeah.
I'll add my take on why I think this conversation is important, really because it comes up a lot in our conversations. I mentioned this earlier, but it's insidiously coming up for people who, when we do Q&As, for example, for our singles program in core, people are always asking the question, how do I maintain a healthy relationship while also receiving the benefits of having relationships with the opposite gender without going to the extreme of saying, I'm never going to talk to the opposite gender ever, but there are ways to do it, to navigate that in a productive way. So I think under that, there's a reason it keeps coming up is because of fear. There's a certain level of fear that is surrounding in many different angles, no matter how you slice it. The reason, if you really dig deep as to why this is such a prevalent topic for us and for many people, especially single folks, and for parents too, by the way, is that there's fear surrounding this. So I want to take the next section of this episode to really unpack the fears that people are facing. Why is it that this topic produces so much fear in people's hearts? Can you guys answer to that?
Yeah, it's a tough question. David, do you? Okay, I think you're muted, so I'm just gonna go. I think there's a lot of different types of fears around this topic, and one of those I mentioned, where when we don't know the opposite gender, we become afraid of it, scared of, the unknown, right? So that's one fear that may drive some people to not engage at all completely with someone from the opposite gender. But then when they go into their matching preparation and, then the blessing and all these things, the fact that they didn't have any type of relationship with somebody else prior to that was from the opposite gender, makes things a bit difficult. So that's one fear I feel like it comes up a lot, especially for women, because there's a lot of women that really just have this extreme position. And then this other fear of confusing that relationship, because we want to maintain, right, keep our purity. We want to keep ourselves, our hearts pure, not having loved anyone in a romantic way before our blessing, right? And so there's this fear where we feel like if we have a close relationship with someone from the opposite gender, we might confuse it and we might end up having and developing some, romantic feelings, or even having some sort of mistake regarding our sexual integrity with them, which is, I think, the biggest fear from also the parents' perspective, right? That their children will act in a reckless and dangerous way before the blessing, which is totally understandable. Yeah, and the more I grow, the more I understand why my mom didn't want me to hang out with men. And I completely understand, but I do feel like the extreme doesn't work. I and yeah, I think that's the way I would answer that question. I don't know if you want to go deeper into it. Is it? Yeah, those are the main fears, I think.
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, got it.
Yeah, I think.
Thanks.
Sorry. I think I would just add, from the female perspective, there is the word. I'm gonna put this. There is the fear that we might as I was saying, you confuse some type of relationship with the one that you should have with your spouse, especially from female side. I think receiving attention from men, specifically, at a certain type of age, we might confuse that, right? We might get confused ourselves, right? And so for the purpose of having, a healthy, high-known relationship with somebody from the opposite gender, having a clear reason, motivation, and vision for that is very important, so that you won't confuse, the fact that you have a brother, a friend that is a brother to you. You don't confuse that attention with something else, right? I think that's the main thing from the female side.
Got it. Any thoughts on that, David?
A lot of times when I'm talking with brothers in my groups, they can often say they think women are scary. And I think it's quite funny, because I'm like, really? You think they're scary? And they're like, yeah, they're just so different. And they can be so, I don't know, emotional. And they can just be so, I don't know, they can also be so attractive and so kind of fiery, And it's like, let's unpack this. I think men obviously have constant attraction towards the opposite gender, because we are always if you look at it biologically, we're just always fertile. So, we're just always in that sexual state. But I think some men are actually rather afraid of their emotions, and they're actually afraid of being attracted to someone. So they might see a particular sister who is rather beautiful. Maybe she's wearing attractive clothing that exposes her body. Maybe she just has a really nice face. And brothers can actually feel fear, like, she's in the room. This is terrifying. I feel uncomfortable, because they don't want to, because when you're attracted to someone, like 100% your attention is on them and you kind of become blind to everything else. So men know this. Men know that they're going to be attracted. So they can actually be scared of falling in love because they know they're going to be completely, concentrating on this person. And maybe they had other ideas of how they're going to spend that, I don't know, that day, that workshop, whatever. And they're like, oh no, I'm now going to be always thinking about this one person, which kind of conflicts. It's a very internal battle because at the same time, we have this desire to want to like people. We want to see people and see their beauty. And so some guys would be like, yeah, I have no problem with feeling attracted to this person because it makes me feel good. She has wonderful hair. She has a lovely smile. And it's like, it makes me feel happy. But what that is looking at that person from a very selfish perspective. When I think about sexuality and I think about relationships, I think you should really be looking at it from, firstly, what's God's perspective? What's God's value in every person? But also, are you looking at a relationship from a self-centered view or from the perspective of the other person, for their sake? So I would say that with friendships, you should really be thinking about the other person. Not how do they make you feel, but how can you serve that person? And if that becomes confused, then you're entering dangerous territory. And same with your sexual desire. Are you looking at your desire from a selfish perspective or from a perspective of I want to give it? And not giving sex, to everyone, but giving your energy, right? Because we have to preserve and save all our sexual desire for one person in our life, just one person.
Yeah.
And it can be tricky, especially at people my age who are at the age where they could get blessed. It's like, okay, is the person I'm noticing, are they the one? It's always going to be at the back of your mind. I'm trying to find the person. I'm trying to find that one special person. So who is it going to be? And could it be this person? I mean, I like her. She's nice. Maybe I'm interested in something more than just her physical features. Maybe her personality, maybe her commitment to God is very attractive. I mean, I would definitely say that my eyes of attraction have moved from physical to how happy is this person? How adventurous are they? How much are they committed to living a good life? That's attractive for me. And so I have to be very careful when seeing like really good people because they're like the thing that attracts me most are those really decent sisters who are just genuinely very joyful and give a lot of love. I have to be very careful with those people because I need to make sure I'm looking at them as first and foremost God's daughters. So yeah, women can be scary for men, because they have this influence on us. They can like cast this spell on us where we suddenly become completely interested in them. But it's not always the women's fault. Obviously, if you're not dressed modestly, then it kind of is your fault. But it's kind of like, I think men will be biologically attracted anyway. So it's not actually the women's fault if we are having a crush on them. And I know this can be a big thing that's weighing on sisters' minds is, oh, am I a bad person because people are having crushes on me? Do I have this influence which is unhealthy? I think, you shouldn't put too much pressure on yourself if someone else is attracted to you. If you're a decent person, you're always going to have people attracted to you. So it's just about maintaining a healthy and clear boundary in your mind as to how you act in front of the opposite gender.
Yeah. Can I add something to that? Because what you were talking about just before, it's very interesting because we do have that fear of having our interactions being confused. Like I also had that fear at some point where I was being, a good sister, and I had that fear where the other person might interpret my actions as, oh, she likes me, she loves me, or she's in love with me, or something like that, where, in actuality, I was just being a good sister. And the fear of being sexualized, right? We talked about it in our last episode. And this is the main, negative experience that women go through, where they'll have that negative perspective on men altogether, all of men, where if they were sexualized at some point, then they will think of all men as being, disgusting or, gross or something like that, right? And actually, I feel like that was my own experience, where I was bringing that into my marriage, right? And I actually just started to realize that that is something that is natural in men, in a way, that God put so that our husbands would actually be completely focused in us, us, the wives. And I actually learned to appreciate that now in my blessing, right? But of course, there's a moment before that blessing, before the matching, where that can happen at any point, and it's scary for us women when we are navigating those waters, let's say. And what you were saying about not putting that pressure in us, I think there is a point of consideration for, yes, that's not our fault, but at the same time, if we're not clear ourselves in what are the reasons we are being friends with someone, why do we have that friendship, or what is our reason for our blessing, our ideal, our purpose, those things that we are working towards in our life. And if we don't have that very clear, there is a room for confusion from anyone, right? And so, yes, it's not always our fault, but there is a room for, we are kind of like inviting that situation to happen at some level, not 100%, of course, but maybe not intentionally, maybe subconsciously. That is something like an energy that we are kind of like emanating from us. And, I actually had that experience where I wasn't scared of getting confused myself with my brother, with, a friend that I consider my brother. But I thought to myself, so if that person gets confused, that's his problem, right? And I was very, very selfish, right? I didn't realize that at the time. I was being very selfish and very self-centered. So I was getting the benefit of having that friend, that brother being my friend, but that friend was getting confused, right? And I wasn't really thinking of his own journey, right, to his own blessing, to his own ideal life. And even though he was getting confused by my actions, and I wasn't going to do anything about it, because it wasn't my responsibility. That's what I thought, right? Until I got that reality check, and I realized that there may have been something in my own clarity, my own lack of clarity, that was kind of like inviting that situation to happen. And so I started to put more clear boundaries, as you were saying, David, right? And just understanding the scope of boundaries that I needed to put if I wanted to give myself completely, purely my heart, my mind to my future spouse. There were some clear boundaries that I needed to put for me, but also for my friend that was my brother. So, yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes women have said things like all men are like this, especially when we do workshops and we go really deep into people's pains and wounds. Sometimes people, men and women, say like all men are like this, all women are like that. And I've heard women say that, like all men are like dogs, basically. Will sexualize everything if it moves or doesn't move. And then one time I looked at a sister and I was like, well, look how you're dressed, honestly. Like, don't you think that will attract a certain kind of person and energy? And case in point, my wife has never had issues with men hitting on her. And she's a very attractive body, objectively speaking. For a young mom with 3 young children, she's very fit, but she's never had that. Why? Because she doesn't release that energy into the world. She doesn't. I don't either, to women, I think. That's what I've been told by, I was told by a woman before, and not a member. She said, I have a very, like, I'm not interested vibe to me.
Yeah.
That I kind of portray to women, like I'm not interested, which is interesting because I don't do that on purpose. But I guess it's a result of being married at 18 years old. And it's just like, when you're blessed, guys, it's just like a whole world of like, that's just not in my headspace anymore. It doesn't take any bandwidth of like trying to attract women and look a certain way for women and act a certain way for women. So by nature of that, I kind of have this kind of essence of like, not interested. And I got my rings. If you guys are watching, I got my rings on all the time. My blessing ring and my Lord of the Rings ring of power. I've liberated it I have liberated the ring of power for goodness, to use it for good and for God. And so, yeah, I just wanted to make a point on the shadows of the fear that we experience. I will be the first one to say I think that there's a really subconscious fear here that's going on, which is why it's so prevalent, that we need to address, because that's the high noon way. And if it makes people feel uncomfortable, that's good. Thank you for listening. But I really want to address this. And I think that the reason, the way that this question is framed a lot of the time is like this. People say, is it okay to do X,
Yeah.
Y, and Z? Is it okay to spend? Does that make sense? And anytime the question is framed like that, there is a desire underneath that to push to the edge as far as possible without crossing a boundary, quote unquote, right? Crossing a line, which in essence is trying to say, it's similar to the question of like, is it okay to masturbate without watching porn? Is it okay to watch certain types of porn? Is it okay to do X, Y, and Z? Where in reality, is it okay is irrelevant to the fact that that's not the real thing that contributes to whether you have a successful blessing in the future or not, is how close you got to crossing the line. So I want to address this really subconscious, almost a intention that people have to get as close as possible through spending time together, through messaging, through feeding some desire people have, which is kind of like comes from a healthy desire, but feeding it in an unhealthy way, especially when people are not in a place where they're ready, right? Because that's reality. If you have a person or two people that are not in a place where they feel they want to pursue a relationship or get married and have a family, yet they find themselves spending so much time with the opposite gender, it's a red flag that they're not being deliberate with their time, with their attention, with their focus, because they're letting their feelings and emotions dictate where they want to go. So in the spirit of high noon, the high noon way is, okay, forget what is okay and what's not okay, what the church says is okay or not. Forget all of that. The real question is, what do you want? First of all, what do you want? And second of all, does what you want align with what you feel God, to the best of your ability, wants for you in your life? And what does your conscience and your original mind say? And importantly, are you taking action toward manifesting that reality and that ideal in your life? Because is it okay to masturbate or not? It depends on many things, but ultimately, is that what you want in your life? If the answer is no, it's not who you want to be. It's not the man, woman that you want to be. It's not the relationship. It's not the habit you want to bring into your marriage. Then no, it is not okay, because it's not your North Star. Is it okay to, have a friend that is a woman, as a man, or a man or as a woman of the opposite gender, that you have give and take with? Is that what you want? Really ask yourself that. If the answer is no, then no, I don't think so. My experience has been, my closest friends of the opposite gender have always been blessed sisters, same as David, older sisters, aunt figures. I've actually never had a close woman in my life, because I know that if I pursued that and I made all these reasons like, oh, I need to find a close friend that's single. Okay, why does she have to be single? I don't know. I need to find a close single friend that I can develop an intimate relationship, so that I can, not intimate, you know what I mean? Like a close friendship, so that I can understand the world of women, so that I can prepare for marriage. It's like, no, now I'm fooling myself. Now I'm just making up reasons why I can edge the line of my standards. Where in reality, if I asked myself as a single dude back in the day, I would have been like, you know what? That's not what I want. What I want is to develop a healthy relationship with women. Yes. Does that mean I have to do that through finding a peer single person and create the energy? No. So I was just like, forget everyone that is a potential spouse for now, because I'm not ready for that. I've decided I'm not ready for that. And I started developing close relations with sisters that were kind of like my brother friends' wives. If you have like a close friend that is married or blessed, that's an excellent person to become close with, right? Like your best friend or one of your childhood mates, or an older brother or sister that's married, like develop a relationship with that person, because then you have that relationship with the opposite gender to be married, right? I think that's really valuable as well.
Yeah, I feel like I did something similar, but it's still peers. But I didn't have friends from church that were close friends to me, because those were kind of like potential spouses. So I would have friends from high school or something, and I was, yeah, it was a bit, dangerous, and playing with fire. I completely recognize that now. Back then, I felt like I did wanted that in my life, so if I was going to have that, I at least was going to be with someone that there was no way that, at least for me, in the potentiality of, having a relationship with them, that would ever be in my mind. Yeah. So that was for me in my case. Yeah. The reasons for, in my case, I was missing my brothers, actually, my blood related brothers, but we weren't having a good relationship at that moment. So I guess I was kind of trying to find someone that would kind of like fill that space for me. But because I was so clear, my friend, is a real close friend for me, that never, got confused, neither for him nor for me. But I definitely do agree that it's way better to have a friend that, is older, that's married even, where that potentiality of being a spouse is not there. So there's no confusion. There's no potential for confusion or even acting on that confusion if somebody gets confused. And I feel like it's very important to frame this whole thing about, relationships with the opposite gender or anything like that, and understanding that this is also the first time that is that is happening, that we want this type of relationship to occur in a healthy, way, high noon type of way, right? Because, any time in history until now, it was always confusion. It was always, um, misuse of love, misuse of sex, or anything, or something like that, right? But we are the first, people trying to do this, so it's okay that we are scared of how to do it, or we don't know where to go to, or who to look as a whom to look as a role model of this or anything like that, because we are doing this for the first time, and so we are growing. And I think understanding yourself, being self-aware of what you need and what you can have or cannot have because you're ready for it or not, is very important, so that, you don't go, as you're saying, trying to move the line of what's good or bad or what you need or don't need. And if you can't at the moment, that's okay, because that means that you need to grow. And that's it. Doesn't mean that you're a bad person or anything like that, right? If you're having problems with your sexual integrity, then, you just need to work on that, so that you're able to be a person that has a very, good lifestyle, has high noon habits, all these things, so that it's able to relate to other people, whatever their gender is. This concept of looking at people from God's perspective, right? That all of us are children of God, all of us are sisters and brothers from the same family, is something very new that we're trying to do as well. And it's kind of hard sometimes to maintain that perspective and actually seeing somebody's value, original value, and love them so much that you would think of their journey, and their own goals. And if that person needed space, you would give that to them, because that that's what they need. It's very new, and it can be, something that you can work on.
Yeah, it is definitely reasonable that it's hard in the beginning because we're figuring it out, right? I agree with that. It's helpful just to understand that it's a reasonable challenge that we're facing, and to give ourselves grace and to receive grace for that. Not as an excuse, right, to make mistakes, but as an understanding. And I think that's valuable, David? Okay, so to wrap up this conversation, how do we implement the high noon way into our relations with the opposite gender, brothers and sisters, in a high noon way? Because we haven't really touched this territory before in high noon, also in history. So what would be the practice of the 5 virtues of high noon inside the context of brother sister?
Good question. Well, I feel like you kind of shared a good way to go about it. If what you want, be clear on what you want, and then whatever aligns with it, it's going to kind of like work on that sense. And applying the 5 virtues to it, it's like the best method, I think. Being accountable to what we want, which is, I assume, right, having that blessing. And so to be able to keep that, our pure lifestyle in our lives, and also with our relationships with brothers and sisters, I think it will look a bit different to, in general, to everyone. It will look a bit different, because you personally will know what you want, what type of boundaries do you need to take and put in place for yourself. If you're a person that falls in love easily, then you need to work on that, and definitely not be, on one-on-one type of situation with someone. And the same thing, or, they're different people, but also what you and David mentioned about having friends that are married, that are older than you, that can give you that older sister, older brother perspective. And that's a great way to go about it because, to be honest, you don't really need that peer, same level type of relationship necessarily to understand the other perspective, the other gender's perspective. Yeah. So have clear boundaries, right? Have clear reasons as to why you have those relationships and then be accountable to that. Be honest with it. What are you getting from that relationship? Some level of intimacy that you should be reserving for your wife, for your husband, then definitely put a, higher boundary. But yeah, I don't know, are you having integrity in that relationship in terms of your blessing, in terms of what you want for your blessing? And, hold that standard that you want for your wife, for your husband, yourself, right? Can't expect our husbands, our wives, future spouses to have this standard of, for example, never falling in love with someone and then us not having that standard ourselves.
Yeah, I think a key word is honesty that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Of the 5 virtues. If y'all are concerned about where to start, you don't know how to navigate the healthy relationship with the opposite gender, start with having the courage to be honest with yourself. When we say honesty, we mean being truthful with yourself. What are your intentions? Where are the shadows and the fears that are surrounding this topic of brother-sister peer relations? And let it out in the open. Address it, talk about it, share with somebody, share it with a wise uncle figure, aunt figure, your group in High Noon. Join a High Noon program where we are wise people in the context of everyone trying to have the same common base of creating a radiant blessing. Those are the people that we should be talking to and sharing with. So cast your shadows, shed light on the shadow, and then the shadow cannot exist anymore in the presence of light, and you will feel liberated from that feeling. And so we're asking y'all to just be honest with yourselves, essentially, and just ask yourself, be clear about what you want and go in that direction. And if you are clear and you are taking action fearlessly, courageously, then you're doing it. You are doing it, my friends. Like, you will be there. You will get there eventually. Just keep going down that path.
Yeah.
Just keep doing it. Yeah. We do have a program that is dedicated to single folks that are preparing for marriage and want to be excellent spouses in the future. You can go join that program. It's free. We have limited spots called Core, and you can join it at High Noon. And also, if people are wanting to gain sexual integrity, work on porn, masturbation, sexual behaviors, then you can join Ascend, which is also at High Noon. And we invite you to be there to join us for those programs. Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing else. Thanks.
Okay. We have nothing else. David is struggling with his internet bandwidth. So he's been fighting that fight for the last 10 minutes. We heard from David. And if you guys need anything, let us know. We love you. We will catch you in the next episode.
Listening.